What did you find? I'm sure you got asked this question like a billion times, but I'll ask you here too. What did you find harder to do?
Cigarettes.
Cigarettes or writing a book?
Oh, yeah, no. That's a good. Now that I haven't been asked, that's a good question.
I felt like that would be something that everyone would ask. Like, was it the addiction or writing the book that was the hardest thing?
No, not even close. The addiction was way harder. Like writing
Of
the book
course,
was like,
yeah, it's your whole body.
I mean, was difficult at the time, but it was like enjoyable. Like there was,
Mhm.
that's a great question. Harder, no doubt. Like quitting all this shit was way harder. But as far as like more rewarding, more life changing for the good, probably also the quitting shit. Yeah. I never wanted to write a book. I never like thought like I would. I never
Yeah, you
even
did the
I thought
podcast first, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so you were like, "Oh, just start the podcast, kind of like journal it as I'm going."
Exactly.
At what point were you like, did someone tell you like, "Yo, you should do this into a book," or were you kind of like, "Man, write a book"? Like,
Oh no, I got like the fucking most like oh Jesus Christ. Sweetest like doesn't happen. So the podcast was doing like well enough and I only had like 3 months left. And I was ready to just like play out the string, you know. I was like, I'm just gonna quit this shit and like do these episodes, but I'm like not writing my intros. I'm not gonna care, you know. And I'm not gonna leave my house. I'm just gonna like be a shut in. And then I was like, no, that's what I always do. Like, what the fuck? This isn't that bad. So I wrote an article for Vice. I pitched them like, hey, this is all the stuff I'd quit this year, which to that point was I was already off hard drugs and alcohol, but then at that point it was weed, caffeine, biting my nails, cigarettes, red meat, dairy, porn, gossiping, credit cards. So I'd already quit
gossiping.
those 9 and then had sugar, social media, my smartphone to go. And then just pitched the Vice that article, like, and that's a good elevator pitch. They were right away like, yep, send write up like 1,000 words and send it to us. And then my first draft was like shit. And then, but I wrote a few more drafts. And then by the end, it was like, I think it was like maybe 1,500 words or whatever. Anyways, but they really liked it. They ran it on like January like 2nd, like a New Year's resolutions. They called it How to Quit Everything in 2018. And then my buddy really at the time, I just knew him through comedy, Charlie Demers. He runs like his own imprint of a publishing house. So like, you know how like Interscope is actually like Death Row, like Death Row is like
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
subsidiary of Interscope. It's like that. So like his imprint's Robin Eggs, and their publishing house is Arsenal Press. And Arsenal and Robin's Egg just like based off the Vice article offered me a book deal, and I was like,
Wow.
okay. But I had so much fun writing the Vice article, and it was more enjoyable and rewarding than I even expected. So then I did like full on, just like, oh well, you know what? Maybe I will. I even messaged my girlfriend at the time and messaged her. Sorry to try to hide that self view, and then I messaged her like, you know, I'm gonna write a book. This was really fun, some shit like that. And then like an hour later, Charlie messaged me. I really enjoyed your Vice article. Did you ever think of writing a book? I just sent him the
Wow.
screen cap. I was like, I just sent this to my girlfriend. So then he
Bit
sent
of
the article.
manifesting happening there.
It was pretty easy. Like, no, people don't, you know, there's writers that are far more talented than I who've published more pieces in more renowned publications than Vice that have not gotten a book deal. So I feel very fortunate that I did, and especially very fortunate to work with Charlie because he like really gave me like a great writing education. Um, I was very wasteful with words, and I was very
What do you mean by
like
wasteful?
uh like certain anecdotes or asides or whatever that didn't need to be in there. So, okay, the first draft I sent him was 95,000 words, which to give perspective, uh, like most books that are like 200 pages, a little bit more, like especially memoirs, that's around the length, are 55,000 words. So like I sent this guy War and Peace, basically, of my life. And he was like, oh my God. He was
War
like,
and
dude, there's a,
Peace.
so he had to like really like, and I'd always struggled with that, to be honest with you. Like, in my long form writing of just like unnecessary, because for me it's always just like how many jokes can I get in, right? And it's like, well, it's
Mhm.
still gotta like go places, and sometimes you just drop good jokes. And then all that like kill your baby stuff that I'd heard that never really did. And yeah, it was a long process. I got offered the book deal like January 2018, and my book came out April 2021. So
Yeah, yeah.
the pandemic obviously had a little bit to do with that, but the pandemic only delayed it like another 8 months or so. Like
Oh.
it was already going to be a long process, and I basically learned to write.
Did you find that writing this book, like what you learned from that, has helped with like writing your stand up? Do you find like your jokes are tighter, or if it has it influenced it in any way, you think?
That's another great question, Jr. Stop that damn podcast. It's got great questions. Yeah, like it should have more than it did, probably, to be honest with you, because there were times where I was like, oh, I feel like this could work on stage, even though because it's very different to write bits than versus like prose. But then
Hmm.
I noticed like, oh, but if I write out the prose and then just like sift through it to find like, oh, there's a premise, there's a premise, there's a premise, there's a punchline, and then kind of reverse engineer them. But it was more, I don't know, I feel bad saying this because I still don't. I've honestly sat down to write stand up under 10 times in my entire life. Like I just
Mm.
don't do it. Things come to me and then I go on stage at an open mic and try and talk them out. And that's usually my
No,
process.
that's the
You've
best
been listening to
ending.
The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.